Use a calculator to perform the indicated operation. Round the result to 2 decimal places. So here we're going to be multiplying a couple of signed fractions. Down here we'll be dividing with some signed decimal numbers. So let's pull up our calculator because the problem says use a calculator. So let's pull up our calculator and work these operations. So the first problem, we have negative 10 181sts. So we're going to use this sign down here for our negative, negative 10. And then we're going to use our fraction key before we go to the denominator, 181. And notice that's being multiplied. So we're going to multiply that by negative 53. And then we're going to do our fraction key before we go to the denominator, 92. And when we press enter, now notice that my answer is being given to me in a fraction form. But if you remember the directions talked about rounding to decimal places. So what we want to do here, let's go ahead and jot down this fraction. So our numerator is 265, so let me write that down here. The numerator was 265, and the denominator was 8,326, 8326. Now, obviously that's not a decimal, but we can create a decimal out of that easily enough, can't we? We can come back to our calculator, and we can enter in 265, and we can divide that by 8,326, and that's going to give us the decimal form that we're going to round to 2 places. So we want to look 2 places past the decimal and then 1 more to tell us how to round, because in the 3rd place we see a 1. That's not enough to bump that 3 up to a 4, so my final answer is going to be 0.03. So 0.03. So notice, even though when we first did our work we came up with the fraction, we can then think about that fraction as if it was a division problem to come up with the decimal that the problem was asking us for in the directions. Now this next problem isn't going to give us that same kind of issue because it's given to us in decimal form. So the calculator will certainly give us our answer back in decimal form. So let's clear out our last results. Here we have a positive 65.398, so 65 and 398 thousandths. And we're going to divide that by a negative, notice our negative sign is down here, negative 4.27, 4 and 27 hundredths. Now some of you might notice that I didn't use the parentheses here. My calculator is okay with that. When we write this by hand, we absolutely want to use the parentheses. The calculator has a little bit more flexibility. We can use the parentheses if we want, and that's not going to hurt us. In this particular problem, we don't have to use those parentheses, so I went ahead and left those off here. So let's come up with our answer. So we certainly would have expected that it would be negative, because a positive divided by a negative is always going to give us a negative. Negative 15.31569, blah, 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 round to 2 decimal places. So we look to that 3rd place past the decimal. We see that that's a 5. Since it's 5 or higher, that's going to round that 1 up to a 2. So we're going to have negative 15.32 for our final answer. So negative 15.32. So negative 15 and 32 hundredths would be the final answer for that one.